Ek gesels vanoggend met Wandile Sihlobo en hy is die hoof-ekonoom by Agbiz. Wandile, welcome to GROOTplaas.
Thanks for having me on, Meer.
It's such a pleasure. Let's talk about this topic of farm jobs and the increase, but wage rise could dampen growth. What is happening?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is an important subject to have a conversation with. And I think one can look at it in a number of perspectives. The first perspective being that as South Africa, we have a challenge of high unemployment, low economic growth, and rising poverty. And what we see from these numbers is that the South African agricultural sector remains one of the important sectors that is assisting us as a country to be able to confront those problems. You look at those numbers that you are referring to, Mia, it's around about 894,000 people that were in this sector in the second quarter of this year. Sure. What's important is that it is up by 1% from the same time last year and 2% on a quarter-on-quarter basis, which means then that this sector is still playing a robust and an important role on that. You may ask the question of what is driving this, and I think that the improvement we are on the summer crop planting is one of the part of that. Improvement in the output in the horticultural space is one of that, and I think the slight recovery also within the livestock industries is one of those aspects that is supporting this growth in jobs.
Do we usually see these numbers this time of the year? Like you mentioned now, it's that time of the year, planting season is coming up, and so how does it compare with previous years?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. That's an important point that you're raising there, because if you look at this year, we've done reasonably better than the previous year. But most importantly, which is the point you're raising here, is the fact that we see this being the highest quarterly employment figure in about 4 years. So we haven't seen this in a long time. So it was actually warming to see the agricultural sector contributing so significantly in resolving the problems that we're in. But I think that what should not be lost to us is the fact that agriculture faces a range of problems in South Africa. Either it's a load shedding, it's municipalities that are failing, it's roads that are not properly maintained. All of these, they are increasing the cost of doing business and the cost to the farming sector, which is why when we saw the robust employment and felt that, you know, it's good that the sector continues to employ as many people. You can only imagine then if we had resolved some of the problems, perhaps maybe the employment would be more robust than what we see.
But Wandile, that's what I always say, is when we look at the agricultural sector, it's such a lively and such a big sector with so much potential, and we know when the figures are good, it means we are doing good. So I can just imagine it makes sense that the job opportunities should obviously increase. It's something to be happy about, right?
Yeah, absolutely. This is something that we would be happy about to see it happening. But what we're now thinking about is, say, are these the jobs that can be sustained? And I think that, of course, given the wage pressures that are coming up there, we've seen the minimum wage increasing. And of course, for some of the labor-intensive sectors, for example, within the fruit industry, we saw that the colleagues were complaining to say, look, this is putting more pressure on the sector. And I think what is really troubling is the fact that if the roads were better, if the water infrastructure was better, if there was a stable electricity supply, if the municipalities were doing what they have in small towns, then farmers wouldn't be in a position where they are spending a lot of money maintaining roads to the extent that the increases in the wages begins to add pressure on them. So it's a dancing role where you have to balance these. The other thing here that assisted us a great deal was the fact that we had this robust crop because of the favorable rainfall, and at the same time, when the commodity prices have not declined significantly to levels seen in 2019. So I think that from a profitability perspective, yes, people are under pressure, but they were still able to sustain this employment perspective. So we need to address the municipality issues and the other things in order for us to be able to see the sector doing well, especially with the wage pressures starting to present challenges for some farmers.
I absolutely agree with you. If we can take a few minutes and just focus on the wages. So the wage situation. So obviously, you know, jobs are increasing on farms, but also wages are going up. So just that balance between the two. If you can explain that, I mean, how do we still see favorable increase in jobs, but wages are higher?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of literature that always touches on these things to say, yes, the relationship is not always as obvious that when there are adjustments on wages, you will see the employment going down. And I think that even the farmers themselves, they know that they are serving the society, and their contribution is to ensure that as many people as they can in our society are employed and are contributing positively to the economic development of the country. And of course, you know that we look at agriculture always with the eye that it can create more employment.
Absolutely.
I was just now thinking about the outlook for up until 2030. There's still an idea that there could be closer to 1 million jobs more that can be created in agriculture, provided that there is more land that comes into production, land that is currently in the land reform farms that are in government, land that is in the former homeland. So there's a lot more jobs in that. The point here is that the sector can continue to create jobs, even if their wages are slightly adjusted upwards because of the increase in cost of living generally in society. But to ease pressure on the farmers, we have to lower some of the other things that are increasing the cost. Either it's roads, either it's electricity, either it's the municipalities that are not performing well. So all of the things around the chain that needs to be addressed, animal diseases and all of those problems.
It's always amazing talking about the potential that lies in something, and especially when, I mean, we're talking about how much more can be created. And once again, I do want to mention, I mean, in an industry or sector like agriculture, which it never stops, it just goes on and keeps producing. So this potential, I mean, what if we dream ideal situation? How can the picture look for our economy, let's say within 10 years, if that potential, those jobs just become more and more and more?
I am more optimistic, Mayor, that we are actually at a space where we could see improvement in South Africa's agriculture, as well as its share in economy becoming ever more important as we've seen in the past. What we're looking at here from the numbers on our side and the numbers that are coming from BFAP and some of our colleagues in the master plan is that this sector could see its gross value added, its value increasing by anything between 15 to 30% by 2030.
Sure. But
there are a number of things that needs to be done. Firstly, the transfer of land to new entrant farmers, the 2.5 million hectares that is sitting in the government hands, transferred with title deeds. Secondly, making sure that there is incubation and training of all of those farmers coming there. Finance through the blended finances in place. And of course, making sure that some of the state institutions, either it's the OBP, either it's the Act 36 within the registrar's office, all of those are working concurrently to assist on this growth mindset. And I do think that we can be able to see things coming together and realizing more potential. But if then that materializes, then we could see even the employment opportunities and primary sector, as well as in agro-processing, improving. The outlook looking on in a 10-year, 8-year time from now, it's very positive for our sector. But there's a number of things that both private sector as well as the government will need to do to achieve that, working together collaboratively to achieve the long-term growth.
Yeah, absolutely. Come to the table, right? I want to quickly spend some time on the El Niños, the forecast for the 2023 and 24 summer season that's lying ahead. So I heard you mention it, you know, it's something to keep an eye on. Why do you say that?
Yeah, absolutely. You'll appreciate that we are for the past 3 to 4 seasons, we were in a period of what we call a La Nina, which has brought these favorable rainfall, and they've delivered this solid growth that we're talking about, jobs that we're talking about. But we are now at a space where the tide is changing. We are moving to an El Niño, which typically brings below normal rainfall in Southern Africa and indeed in South Africa. So it may be a slightly drier season compared to the past few seasons. But we think that farmers should still go in the field. And I think that they are optimistically going also to be planting starting from mid or October, which is a few weeks from now. And we think that there's still good soil moisture that will support planting. But some of the insight we are also receiving from the South African Weather Service is that the intensity of an El Nino could begin somewhere around about January. So which means that we may have some showers between now to the end of the year, which will assist with the germination of the crop. So the season may be challenging, but we still that there are windows of opportunities for South African agriculture to still do reasonably well. But it's something really to keep an eye on, and keep an eye on the heat condition, keep an eye on the rainfall patterns by growers.
And that's the wonderful thing about it, is just good planning, right? Good planning. And I think that's one of the beautiful things of, you know, living in the year 2023. To plan your harvest and to plan, obviously there are factors that you can't control, but the planning part of how your next year is going to look, it's become quite easier, right?
I would say, Mia, right now, the planning part on agriculture is reasonably better than what we've seen in the past, in a sense that there's a lot of information and data that one can tap on to ensure that their season is in a better way. But I must say there's heightened uncertainty that has been introduced by the climate change, being one aspect. But the other risk lies even on trade. I mean, we've all seen what the citrus farmers are experiencing in the EU. So you have to plan for production, but also there are some other risks that lies on trade. There are other risks that lies on crop diseases and animal diseases. So the environment is becoming complex, but the favorable thing right now compared to the past is that there are data, there are certain insights one can tap on, but we in a sector that is ever more challenging. And I mean, the South African farmers are one of the most resilient people that are able to thrive and do well in an environment and a country that is semi-arid like ours, but they are one of the best in the world. So resilience in our farming sector and being strategic and knowing how to plan is some of the things that assist us a great deal.
I absolutely agree with you. Wandile, I just want to pick your brain here for just to end off our insightful conversation, is if there were two main things that you think farmers should be aware of just for the coming season, what would those two factors be, the two main factors that might have the biggest impact on the next season?
I think the key things that the South African farmers have to be watching on, the first one is, of course, the issue of climate as well as the temperatures. We've seen how the heat has been UK, in the US and the UK and elsewhere. That's the one risk. The second risk is outside of agriculture. We are heading into the election year. There's a lot more of populism statements that may come up and lead to a bit more disruptions in our society. So we have to watch the social aspect, and at the same time, we have to watch the risk in the farms that we can manage. And remember that we are part and parcel of the South African society. So it is in our best interest to have a stable and well-functioning society. So those are some of the things we have to be watching going into next year.
Wandile, it's always such a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for your insights, and thanks for keeping us up to date. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Dit was dan nou Wandile Sihlobo en hy is die hoof-ekonoom by Agbiz. Dankie dat jy ingeskakel het. Ek en jy sien mekaar nie môre nie, natuurlik maandagooggend. Ek hoop jy het 'n goeie naweek en ja, sien jou maandag. Totsiens.